again, everybody. Do a quick video here on a mission we did out of Ghazni. My dumb face. Get my camera set up. And if you notice right at the very beginning there, I pushed a button on the dash. There is a stopwatch timer right there, and you'll see the shadows of the rotor blades spinning by. Most likely what I was doing in that situation was the engines were hot, like we just had got back from a mission probably within the last hour, and in order to light the engines off, you got to cool them off first. So what you do is you motor the engine. It's just a mechanical feature. Basically, it's spinning the engine, which turns the transmission, turns the rotor blades, but it's just mechanical. There's no fuel, power going. So you start the stopwatch. I forget what the actual time limit was, but you got to go for so long to bring your temperature range into a certain range before you can put fuel in. And you hear that howling right there. That's the engine actually lighting off. I had introduced fuel on the engine control levers there. And you hear the second engine howling now. You see that green board I just moved. You'll see it again a little bit later, but that was basically a moving map. By today's standards, it's a freaking tank, but back in 2010-11, that was pretty high speed. Basically, we had all of our local area maps loaded in there, different types of maps and terrain maps, and you can switch between them. You could actually program missions into it, like on a thumb drive, and then give you a path and a moving map, which now the Blackhawks have that all built into the dash. And you'll see the cord I have hanging there clipped to the dash and into the center window. It's a backup antenna for that device, GPS. It's connected to aircraft power, which in turn would also connect to the aircraft GPS antenna, which a lot of times it would drop connection. And not only was it a moving map, but you could actually communicate, send text messages to other people on there. It was what they call a Blue Force tracker, and everyone else that had the Blue Force tracker, not necessarily that knee board, but the Blue Force tracker. I'm talking trucks and vehicles and infantry units, whatever, they would have these, and if they were turned on, it would light up a little icon on the screen, and you could click on it. You could find out who it is, where they're at. If they're a vehicle, you could see their actual ground speed. Aircraft, you could see their altitude and airspeed. And if you didn't have their frequency, you couldn't talk to them, you could actually click on them and you could send them a text messages. So, high speed for back in the day. Most likely writing down 9-line information on my knee board there. The pilot in the right seat, a friend of mine, he just retired within the last year. After we got back from this deployment, he went to fly a fixed-wing, twin-engine aircraft in the Army, and he finished up his time in the Army flying those, and now he's flying for Tower Air, flying cargo, or as I joke with him, flying rubber dog shit out of Hong Kong. But ultimately, it looks like a pretty awesome job, and just started not too long ago. And here we are taking off to the south. As always, primarily all of our missions were to the south. We did have some to the north. But right down directly south was Route 1, the main highway. I was spoke about it multiple times in other videos, which was the main artery for transportation and moving personnel and equipment, and major and pretty much the primary logistics route, which ultimately led to a war zone of IEDs and ambushes. And interesting. And I'm pointing out here is a giant smoke plume on the highway, which you'll see here shortly. Most likely, if I remember correctly, it was like a fuel truck or some sort of a vehicle, a civilian vehicle that was ambushed, or IED, I can't remember, but either way, it was ultimately set on fire. And that's Route 1 directly under the aircraft right now. Pretty much the only paved road that I recall ever seeing in Afghanistan. Everything else was just dirt paths, dirt trails. You can see all the little smaller trails there. Yeah, there we go, and you got some highway traffic going down. Just go past the burning vehicle and, you know, carry on your day. You see that little circular thing in my window on the left there? That is our only source of fresh air. So ultimately we roasted in the greenhouse up there in the front. At least in the back, the crew chiefs were able to slide their windows open and get some sort of airflow. This particular mission, we were going to a place called Qurabah. It was primarily a Polish base, very small. It was sitting directly next to Route 1. I mean, literally like 20 yards off the highway. And there were multiple days and multiple times where we would go in and out of there 3 or 4 times a day. In fact, on this particular day, I think we went there twice. And the interesting thing about Qurabah was anytime we went in there, and you see the base up to the left there, there's a little square patch right there. But the best and safest place to land was right on the highway, which always made for a butt-puckering event. But ultimately, they kept that route clean right there, you know, and never had any issues. But you see right there how we flew past it. Now we're circling around because we got there, probably caught them off guard, or they weren't ready for us, because what they have to do is they have to bring armored vehicles out and block the road so we can land. And then we're going to circle around to the left again, giving them some more time before we actually put it down.
Permission to come into the back.
So we're circling around to the left again. And they do have vehicles out there. You can see 2 little specks. He's setting up his approach. They would always throw a smoke grenade out so we could determine wind direction. In most cases, it was a crosswind, in which I believe this case was. So, which was fine, as long as we knew we were landing with a crosswind. And you see the aircraft really shaking, the dash shaking there, which typically happens as you're on approach. The whole aircraft shakes. Yeah, you see the smoke grenade blowing across the road. set it down. And vehicles will roll up. Most of the time, depending on what the actual patients were, they'd actually bring them out on the vehicle. Like typically, like I'm not sure what their designation is, but a 8-wheeled, rubber-tired, there you go, armored vehicle, like a Marine Corps LAV. The cage armor on the sides, which was like steel rope netting knitted together. Most people look at that and say, what the hell is that going to do? That's not going to stop anything. But what it would do is, if they would shoot an RPG at the aircraft or at the vehicle, it would hit that cable and it would break it apart, because the rocket propelled grenade is ultimately a shape charge. So if it hits the armor directly, it's going to penetrate the armor, especially if it's designed for anti-armor. But if it hits that cable, it'll break it up and ultimately just blow up on the outside, and everybody should be all right. Crew chief on the right there, he's got his weapon at the ready. And the pilot saw some movement over there to the right. Yeah, there was some farms and stuff right over there. Well, crew chief's getting back in, so getting ready to get the heck out of there. Well, hopefully you enjoyed this. Probably not as much as I did actually flying it, but take off, get the hell out of there, fly to the north. All right. Take care, everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye.